Thanks everyone for joining us. As I said, we're so glad you could join us today for our webinar, Using Trash Trap Data to Inform Local Policy. It's hosted by the International Trash Trap Network. If you don't know me already, my name is Hannah and I manage the ITTN, and I'll be kind of moderating today's session. So today's webinar focuses on discussing how data collected through cleanup efforts can support the implementation of policies and management actions to mitigate plastic pollution. Around the world, data collected from cleanup technologies are helping communities understand where plastic waste is coming from, and understand how science can shape smarter waste management strategies. So we are the International Trash Trap Network, and we will be focusing on projects using trash traps today. But much of what we discuss, I'm sure, is applicable to other manual cleanup efforts too. So because we collect very similar data just through different methods. So I'm glad that other people might be joining who don't have trash traps but might be interested. Today we are joined by an incredible panel of experts who bring perspectives and insights from their on-the-ground action. So they'll be sharing how their data collected locally is informing change through successful translation from data to education and communication to policy. So after presenting, each of our speakers will have 5 minutes afterwards to answer any questions from you, the audience, and then we'll gather everyone together at the end for a panel discussion. So there's lots of opportunities to ask questions, and I really encourage you to do so. And we're really excited to have you here for what I think will be a really great and inspiring conversation. So looking forward to it. So, as I mentioned, today's webinar is hosted by the International Trash Trap Network, or the ITTN, and we are a global network of groups working locally to increase plastic cleanup efforts using technologies which we call trash traps. Each program in the network focuses on their issue locally, and together we are collectively tackling this problem on a global scale. If you're not familiar with the ITTN already, we kind of support these local programs in cleaning up pollution by collecting harmonized data to monitor sources and pathways, to use traps as a centerpiece for community education and engagement, and collectively to inform and motivate upstream solutions to tackle plastic pollution. And we do this largely through different ways, but largely through developing resources to support this work. And I'm going to share a little bit about our resources for data collection in just a second. But we also are trying to host more events like this so we can connect people, share about what everyone's doing, kind of inspire other people to maybe do similar or start their own efforts locally. So why the focus on trash traps? So we know that alongside prevention and waste management, cleanup will be necessary until it is no longer necessary. And trash traps are a great way to supplement manual volunteer-led cleanup efforts, as they can capture what people miss. So they can function in locations that are unsafe or inaccessible for humans. They can function 24/7, which I know many of us might need to or want to, but we can't. And they also collect bulky or heavy items and microplastics, which we all know are very time-consuming and challenging to collect by hand. Trash traps are also often long-term programs, and they require several stakeholders to come together to install, maintain, and manage the technology, which facilitates collaboration. They're also inherently interesting due to their unusual appearance. This often makes them really ideal centerpieces for outreach and education and volunteer opportunities to engage and empower community members to be part of the solution locally. And last but absolutely not least, trash traps and cleanup overall can facilitate long-term data collection on things like the weight, item types and counts of plastic items that we're finding in our waterways and along our coastlines. And this data can inform monitoring, research, and as we're about to hear in a few moments, policies to prevent plastic pollution. And all of this collectively leads to cleaner waterways and reduced harm to our ecosystems, which we know is important to many of us. So today's focus is all on data collection and informing policy. And we can use data to do this in many ways and all kind of feed into each other. So data can be used to support research that identifies prominent pollution sources. It can inform monitoring and risk assessments for plastic pollution. Data is also vital for communication. Numbers are often a great way to engage audiences, demonstrate the scale of the problem on local scales, and get people really interested and passionate about solving the problem. And if we are doing something about plastic pollution, data is a great way to quantify our impact, showing that things can change, we are making a difference, and potentially motivate further action to demonstrate and improve on our successes. And finally, all of this can be used as evidence and motivation to support management actions and policies, from providing, for example, more places to dispose of litter, all the way through to outright bans on single-use plastics. So in understanding the value of data collection and reporting, here in ITTN, we've developed several resources, which I'll quickly go through now. First is our protocols. As many of us will know from experience in the world of plastic pollution, many of us do things similarly, but slightly differently, and it makes it challenging to compare and combine data across groups and locations. So when we formed the network, one of the first things we did was develop harmonized data collection protocols for use with trash traps. We have two versions. We have simple and detailed, and our protocols are designed to be simple, quick, accurate, and adaptable for different trash trap types, data collection goals, or just the capacity of your group. And this also means that data collected using the protocols and shared in our database can be viewed and analysed either individually or collectively, depending on the need. We also know that compiling and reporting data can be time consuming. So we developed a route on Ocean Conservancy's Clean Soil app, which some of you might already be familiar with, last year for trash trap data reporting. So the app has already been used for several years for shoreline cleanups, and it provides a hassle-free way to report data while you're out in the field. You can download it on Apple or Android devices, and it can even be used in locations without cell service. And you can submit your data once you get service again. Once you click submit on your data in the app, it gets fed straight into our global database where you can view your data at any time and download it. And if you are interested in this and want to learn more, we have some demo videos on how to use the app on our U of T Trash Team's YouTube channel. So we'll share the link to that a bit later. And if you want to watch a little walkthrough of how it works, then you can find it on there. Okay, and here is our database. So it's just a little preview of what it looks like. It's called Tides, and it includes cleanup data from both volunteer-led efforts and trash traps from around the world. To view the database, anyone can go on it. It's coastalcleanupdata.org, and you can search for data specifically by group name, by date, and by location, and you can filter for trash traps specifically if you wanted to as well. Currently, with all the data that groups have contributed to this database, we have trash trap data from over 150 groups in 11 countries, and collectively we've removed over 2.5 million kilos of trash since 2019 with the data is from. And so I think it's pretty impressive, and I really hope that this continues to grow and we end up with this really nice global picture of what's happening with trash traps around the world. And if you do have data and you want to contribute to our database, then please do get in touch. Just email us at the email address I shared earlier. We can share it again later on. Finally, last thing about the ITTN is that we, with the data that goes into the database, we compile it each year to make it as easy as possible for groups to use it and share it with the people that need to see it. So we each year it gets published in the International Coastal Cleanup Report, which Sarah leads on. Sarah knows a lot about that. We also publish a kind of global picture of what we've collected each year in an ITTN report. And then each year we also summarize the data from each group in the network and produce these kind of local data reports, and we email them out to you. And hopefully it makes it much easier for you to see everything that you've done throughout the year, identify any trends in your data, and then use that to inform the rest of your work. Okay, that's my blank slide is my cue to stop talking. So enough about us, but we are about to hear some exciting examples from our guest presenters. So I'm now going to hand it over to our first presenter, Dierdre Francks. And I will just get up my notes, sorry, to introduce you. So Dierdre is the data manager at Keep Tahoe Blue, where she applies best practices in data analysis and management to protect Lake Tahoe, a freshwater lake in Northern California. She holds a degree in Earth Systems from Stanford University and previously worked at POSIT PBC, formerly RStudio, where she helped build a learning platform to promote reproducible research practices across public and private sectors. So Dierdre, whenever you're ready, you can get your slides up and go for it.
Great. Let me just click share. Hopefully you can all see this.
Perfect.
Good and hear me? Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for the intro, Hannah. That was wonderful. And like you said, I'm Dierdre Francks. I'm the data manager at Keep Tahoe Blue. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk a little bit about how we use our trash trap and other cleanup data to tackle litter at its source here in Lake Tahoe. So to get into the agenda for today, I'm going to speak briefly just about our setting here for those who might not be familiar with Lake Tahoe and why Keep Tahoe Blue exists. Then I'll share about how we tackle litter through both community cleanups and more recently our trash traps. And then finally, I'll wrap up by showing what we do with that data and how we use our science to solutions approach to try to stop litter at the source before it becomes a cleanup issue. Great, so jumping into the setting, we're here at Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe is a really unique place for those who haven't visited before. We sit on the border of 2 states, so California and Nevada here in the United States, and 5 different counties share the lake. It's the 2nd deepest lake in the United States and the 3rd oldest freshwater lake on Earth at 2.3 million years old. We receive a ton of visitation here, more than 15 million annual visits. But importantly, we're not a national park here in Tahoe. So we don't have the same protections of a place like Yosemite or Grand Canyon or those other parks. Keep Tahoe Blue was founded in 1957 by a group of community members who were really passionate about Tahoe and protecting its clarity. Today, we organize our work around 3 main initiatives. We advance restoration, combat pollution, and tackle invasive species. And we think that these 3 areas really cover a lot of the biggest threats to Lake Tahoe. Today, I want to talk specifically about our efforts to combat pollution. So tackling litter here at Tahoe is a big part of our effort to combat pollution. As I mentioned earlier in numbers, Tahoe is a very popular destination. Here's a visual representation of that. So any day in the summer here, our beaches, our shoreline might look like this. So lots of visitation. And with that visitation can come significant litter impacts. So with the 15 million visitors that I mentioned and on the order of 10 to 20 million car trips every year, Keep Tahoe Blue works to make sure that Tahoe doesn't get loved to death. We know that litter on our land and our shoreline can become pollution in the lake. And emerging research is showing that microplastics are present in Lake Tahoe in relatively high concentrations compared to other alpine lakes. So all of this is why since 2014, Keep Tahoe Blue has conducted litter cleanups all around the Tahoe Basin, from our beaches to our meadows, our neighborhoods, and everywhere in between. Along with our trash, our volunteers also gather data on the items that they find. So you can see here our cleanup data card that's been in use for more than 10 years. And this data helps reveal really key insights like which types of items are most often becoming litter in the Tahoe Basin and which areas are most impacted. And then in 2019, we introduced a new program called Tahoe Blue Crew, which allows trained groups of volunteers to adopt locations in the basin as stewards. So all of this adds up to quite a lot of data. So shown here is our regularly updating trash dashboard, which summarizes trends from over, at this point, 2,700 cleanups over the past decade. This data, which I'll get into a little later in the presentation, this data is really the backbone of how we advocate for solutions that prevent litter at the source. So we've used this data to advocate for bans on items like plastic bags, styrofoam, and single-use plastic water bottles. And then we also use it as an education tool to try to demonstrate to the public what happens when there's a lot of use of things like plastic utensils and straws and other items like that. But this brings me to the next step in our approach to combating beach litter in particular, which is piloting new technologies in combination with our volunteer efforts. So shown here is the Bee-Bot. Some of you might be familiar with this. I know there are Bee-Bots kind of all around the world now, but the Bee-Bot was first brought to Tahoe in 2022 by our partners EcoClean Solutions and ourselves, Keep Tahoe Blue. The Bee-Bot, for those who aren't familiar, is an all-electric sand sifting robot. It drives around the beach and removes debris up to 4 inches below the surface of the sand. So when we first piloted the Bee-Bot, we wanted to get a sense of how effective it was. Shown here on the left is an image from the 4th of July, which is Tahoe's busiest holiday. We get tons of visitation on our beaches every day that year. So each year we spearhead a cleanup effort the following day on the 5th of July called Keep Tahoe Red, White, and Blue Beach Cleanup. In 2022, the first year we were operating the Bee-Bot, we put it to the test after volunteers had already combed a stretch of beach. So those volunteers returned with about 30 pieces of trash. It was mostly visible items that could be seen from our volunteers' eyes. Then we deployed the Bee-Bot to comb the same stretch of beach, and it returned with 300 additional pieces of micro trash, so these small pieces. This really highlighted to us the importance of both people and technology in addressing Tahoe's trash challenges. At this point, we've seen 4 years of Bee-Bot cleanings, and the Bee-Bot has performed more than 50 cleanups on all shores of the lake. So this is an aerial image of Lake Tahoe, and you can see all those spots that the Bee-Bot has cleaned at various beaches. We're located on the south shore, so you can see all of those dots there, but each of these shores has been touched by the Bee-Bot. And something I'll point out, what we find again and again are these small degraded plastic pieces, often unidentifiable, so we don't know what the original piece of trash was, but lots of degrading plastics. We also find a lot of non-native nuts and shells, things like pistachio shells, and cigarette butts are all too common, as well as plastic wrappers. A bit about our data protocol for the Bee-Bot. We set out a perimeter that the Bee-Bot cleans. That cleaning area is mapped with a GPS survey device so that we can plot it later, calculate the exact area that was cleaned, and do some aerial imagery. Then those litter items that are collected are sorted and categorized with native items removed from the collection. And this is an example of just one cleanup and the results that were found. We use these data points to evaluate trends in litter at Tahoe. So one thing we're tracking is the difference between our public beaches and our private beaches and whether litter accumulation beneath the sand is different at those places. We also look at the accumulation of litter over a single summer season, so cleaning once early in the season and then later to revisit that spot. And we're also noticing trends in just geographic differences around the lake. Importantly, our trash traps go beyond the Bee-Bot. They also include aquabots. So shown in the upper left here is a pixie drone device, which we're now deploying in the lake to collect both invasive plant fragments, which are a big issue at Tahoe, and also litter. Things like floating styrofoam are more common than you'd expect. We're also piloting tire wear capture devices in collaboration with an organization called the Tire Collective. So that's trying to evaluate how much pollution is caused by vehicles in Tahoe. We consider our volunteers a really great trash trap effort. And then I've spoken about the Bee-Bot, which we now have 3 operational Bee-Bots in Tahoe. And all of these systems result in a lot of data collected. So now I want to turn to what we do with that information. So turning now to some of the ways that we promote policy solutions, and we call this our science to solutions approach. What that means is that behind all of our decision-making, our advocacy, we use the best available science and data, including our trash trap data. So the first way we stop litter at the source is advocacy. Advocacy is a key way that we protect the lake. We've used our litter data to help pass bans on plastic bags, styrofoam items, and then most recently, plastic water bottles, which I want to highlight a bit more. So the South Lake Tahoe plastic water bottle ban is an effort that goes back years here in Tahoe, and it really demonstrates the impact of our data collection. This ordinance bans the sale of single-use plastic water bottles in South Lake Tahoe. And Keep Tahoe Blue was really involved in this effort from the start. In June 2022, we presented data from 2014 onwards, showing how we had collected 20,000 plastic bottles and 27,000 plastic bottle caps just in the Tahoe Basin over that time. Our city council adopted the ordinance amendment. The ban went into effect first just at city events, and then the following year it became citywide. And our work didn't stop there. So after the ban was passed, Keep Tahoe Blue initiated a business audit to evaluate compliance. And we saw a pretty good rate of compliance just within the first several months of the ban. And what's really exciting to us is the adoption of similar bans outside of the city of South Lake Tahoe. So these bans have already been adopted in similar mountain towns in California. And now we're seeing the two of the counties that touch Lake Tahoe are considering a really similar ban. And then on the Nevada side, the state legislature is considering a Tahoe-specific plastic bottle ban. And we're very involved in the advocacy efforts for all of these. Outside of advocacy, another way that we push for change is by implementing and piloting solutions directly. So one example of that is a program called Tahoe Blue Beach. The Tahoe Blue Beach program is designed to give visitors to our beaches an easy choice to make that is also the sustainable choice. So we've done that through partnering with land managers to add additional education, enforcement, and engineering at their beaches so that visitors can always make the right choice. In our first pilot year at one beach, we saw a 97% reduction in litter left behind after the 4th of July holiday. So that really showed us that the program was something worth expanding and scaling. And I'll say our long-running cleanup data, including this BBOT trash trap data, positions us really well to be able to demonstrate the need for these programs and justify their existence. And then once they're operational, to be able to continue monitoring and scale up the programs when we see success. So that's a big focus for the BBOT going forward, is being really integrated with the Blue Beach program to evaluate success. A final way that we push these solutions forward is by funding the science on these emerging threats. So we partner directly with researchers to study microplastics and other forms of pollution in Tahoe. We're very involved in a microplastics working group here in Tahoe, where some of our litter data helps to demonstrate the sources that can eventually become microplastics. We partnered on a dryer vent study to evaluate how much microplastic pollution comes directly from dryers. And as I mentioned, we're working on a tire wear study as well. So we really think that there's a virtuous cycle here where as we receive and partner on clearer science about these threats, we can better advocate and implement solutions. So looking ahead, our work certainly continues in Tahoe. I mentioned those litter ordinances in Nevada and California, and we'll be using our trash trap data certainly to be advocating there. Also looking ahead at the Tahoe Blue Beach program expansion and alternative materials guide for businesses. These are areas where bringing data about what the BBOT finds on these beaches really drives progress in these areas. And then that continuing research with other forms of trash traps. So the aquabots are a big focus moving forward for us to look at in-lake litter. And I think that's it for me. So thank you so much for listening. Here's some of my information and also how you can reach us at Keep Tahoe Blue.
Thank you so much, Dierdre. That was so interesting. I love that the part where you said about you need both people and technology. It definitely is true. That's
Definitely.
crazy stats about how you introduced like the bins and how much that reduced litter. That's crazy. So
Definitely.
Yeah. I loved it. Okay, you're bang on time, so we have 5 minutes for questions.
Great.
So I think I saw a hand raised, but it might have gone down now. Susan or Sarah, if you can see anything, please let me know, because I'm
Sure.
I see one.
Yeah, okay.
Dave, did you have a question? Your hand's raised.
It's a compliment.
Go ahead.
This is
Great.
great work. Good stuff. I'm
Thank
with the
you.
City of Toronto, and just to make the connection, I'm the staff member that's researching the impact of microplastics, and I am looking for our data sets in the Toronto area, but also ideas that the city within our jurisdiction could actually implement that are affordable and effective. So thank you for this great example.
Oh, great. I'm so glad to hear that. And feel free to reach out if you have questions or want to talk more.
I probably will. Thank you.
Great.
Whoops, my camera was off. Sorry about that. I thought it was on. That's what
No
it looked like.
problem.
Yeah.
There you go. Hi, Dave. Thank you. I had a quick question while we're waiting to see if anyone else raises their hand.
Mhm.
I noticed in your figure, cigarette butts are one of the top items in terms of count that you find.
Mhm.
Have you introduced anything to try and reduce people littering cigarette butts on the beaches so far?
Yes, we have. We have a cigarette canister collection program. So we put out these canisters that have lots of fun images on them. They're very like eye-catching, and they're all over the Lake Tahoe Basin. We partner with businesses and other land managers to empty those for us, and then they also report data to us about how much they're collecting, which is great. And then there's also some local policy that I know has been put into action about trying to ban cigarette smoking on beaches. So we try to push forward things like that too.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and like you said, it's nice to see how a policy in one location can translate and kind of trickle into other locations as well. So hopefully that does happen.
Definitely. And that's always our goal, is to try to point about harmonizing data. We're trying to harmonize the policies around Lake Tahoe because we have so many jurisdictions. So that's why these county level bans are so promising, because we really want to get those things harmonized.
Definitely.
And I do see another hand raised. If we have time for one more question. A horseman? There's no first name listed there.
Yeah, sorry, it's Andrew. Thanks
Oh,
very
no,
much.
go ahead, Andrew.
It's just the way it shows up.
Yes.
Just a question. I focused a lot on material that's generated at beach from attendees, and I totally get why that's probably a huge source. I don't know Lake Tahoe. Are there other sources that could be inflows of material into the water that are substantial, or is the public attendance at the beach is the primary source of contaminants?
That's a great question. We focus on beaches for some of our trash trap programs. The BBOT obviously specifically operates on beaches, but our cleanup efforts extend far beyond the beaches. So our neighborhoods and our meadows, our forests even, we have blue crews in all of those locations. And then another source we're looking closely at is there are over 50 tributaries, I think, to Lake Tahoe, so all these streams traveling in. So we really want to make sure that those sources are not contributing things like microplastic pollution.
Nice. Thank you. Also, if we're waiting for anyone else to raise their hand, I just wanted to mention that if you wanted to look at any of the BBOT data from Lake Tahoe, it is in the database currently, so you can have a little look and search and see it. So we've shared it on there already. So you can go and have a look. Okay, I'm trying to keep track. Yes, Susan was saying it's hard to keep track of claps and hands up when they come through. So it's a good problem to have.
Exactly.
Okay. If we hold on for just a second, but if we have no other questions for the time being, we can always move on, and then people can, if they think of something later on. Oh, Sarah raised her hand.
Sarah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Only if we have time. Thank you so much for your presentation. That was really informative. Curious with the BBOT and how you got started. I know you said you have 3 now. You started with 1. What was the fundraising like for that? Or if you're willing to share kind of like how you got that to be. I know you mentioned you do work with businesses as well. I'd just be curious for some of the folks that are looking to get some of these traps? We know they can be pricey and maintenance and whatnot. So if you can speak to that, that'd be really helpful.
Definitely. So we had a pretty unique approach. So I mentioned our partner organization, EcoClean Solutions. They actually operate the Bebot and also the Aquabots that I mentioned. So kind of the way that we've thought about this is we are helping to pilot those technologies in Tahoe. So we provided some of the funding that brought the technology here. And then from this point forward, we're really looking at long-term funding solutions. So things like grants in the Tahoe Basin, which, as Hannah mentioned, these technologies are really exciting to people and I think very fundable. So we go after grants, working with land managers directly to demonstrate to them why they should be invested in having a clean beach. So we've seen a lot of success actually with private beach owners wanting to pay for services with the Bebot. And then just looking after more like local sources of funding as well.
That's good insight, thank you.
Of course.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next presenter. So Nancy, if you're ready, I will just intro you and then you can get your slides up. So we have Dr. Nancy Lauer here. She's a lecturing fellow and staff scientist with the Duke Environmental Law and Policy Clinic. Since joining Duke Law in 2018, Dr. Lauer has worked on a wide range of environmental policy matters, including drinking water quality, children's exposure to toxic chemicals, hazardous waste remediation, and single-use plastics. And recently, she's worked with non-profits Riverkeeper and the City of Durham on measures to reduce plastic pollution through stormwater controls and reduction policies. And today she's going to talk about their work with trash traps. So go ahead, Nancy.
Thanks, Hannah. I am very excited to talk to you about this today. This has been one of my favorite projects that I've worked on, one of the most rewarding projects that I've been able to work on. And a large part of that is because of the network and the collaboration that has been required to make this all happen. And so I'll talk about some of that today, as well as the data that we have been collecting from this network of trash traps and the policy solutions that we have been working towards. And so back in 2020, the Waterkeepers Carolina group, which is a group of several nonprofits that house North Carolina's river keepers and water keepers, received a grant to install trash traps across the state. Each waterkeeper installed, to start with, one trash trap in the watersheds that they work in. Over time, if they got more funding or were able to build their own homemade trash traps, more traps got installed on top of those initial ones that were funded by the grant. And this really allowed for, again, this network of trash traps to be installed across North Carolina. And you can see on the map, those are the 21 trash traps that waterkeepers installed over the last 3 or 4 years. There's more trash traps than that now. These are the ones that we collected data from, and that data will be presented on today. And so most of these trash traps that the North Carolina waterkeepers installed are what you see here in this picture, a Trash Trout Junior. The Trash Trout Junior is manufactured by a local nonprofit here in North Carolina called Asheville Greenworks. And it's very similar, if you're familiar with Osprey's litter getter, it's very similar in style to that. It's essentially a floating cage that is tethered to the banks of a stream with these buoys, and any litter that is carried by the stream gets captured by that trash trap while the water is able then to flow through. And I'll make one quick correction. It's not necessarily all litter, but this is really focusing on floatable litter. And so you can kind of get a sense for that from the picture. Anything floating is pretty easily captured by these cages and the buoy. And when the waterkeepers were installing these trash traps, it was really important to them to be able to do more with them than just clean up the trash that they were collecting. And so that's when I became involved. It started with the Haw River Assembly, which is one of these waterkeeper groups, who approached me about developing a protocol to collect data on the types of litter that these traps were going to be collecting so that they could then use that data to advocate for broader change. If you talk to any of the water keepers who have been working on this project, one of the first things they'll say is that they do not want to install more trash traps. They want to work towards a world where we don't need these trash traps in the first place because this litter is never ending up in the stream. And so that brings me to the data collection effort that was deployed to collect information on what these trash traps were capturing. And so this is a look at the categories that we use to collect that data. We developed these on our own. We wanted a protocol that was going to be simple for volunteers and staff to be able to deploy in the field, and that was going to capture, the major items that we expected to find in the trash trap. And so different waterkeeper groups had different systems for managing and cleaning out their trash trap. A lot of them relied on volunteers who would go out and clean these trash traps maybe every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks. Some of them relied on their own staff to maintain the trash traps. And every time that these volunteers or staff went out to clean the trash traps, they were then counting and categorizing the data that they were finding. And the goals of this were to figure out what were the most prevalent litter items being captured by trash traps, then also to figure out something about sort of the sources of this litter. So do we see more litter in areas with certain land use patterns or other land characteristics? And then the last thing was to explore, what are the pros and cons of using trash traps to collect data and to keep litter out of the stream. And I'm really going to focus just for time on sort of the opportunities and the positive part of these. And of course, they have drawbacks and challenges associated with them, but I won't have time necessarily during the presentation to get into some of the challenges that we encountered, but happy to talk about that more in question and answer. So if any of you have worked with trash traps or really done any kinds of cleanups, you know that you find all kinds of crazy things when you are cleaning these things out. You find a lot of baby dolls with heads, a lot of baby dolls without heads, and both are equally terrifying. Tires, bulky items, kid toys. The top right there is a tea party that one of the 9-year-old volunteers set up, and it's kind of a tea party from your nightmares. And so it's always sort of an interesting glimpse into society and all of the crazy things that can end up in a stream. But for the most part, this is really what it looked like when we were cleaning out these trash traps and sorting through the litter we found to collect that data. We found a lot of styrofoam, a lot of plastic bottles. Styrofoam just proved to be one of the most difficult items to deal with because of the sheer number of fragments that end up in these trash traps. So that picture on the left is a volunteer counting through what's probably hundreds to thousands of styrofoam fragments to be able to support this data collection effort. So most volunteers come away with a newfound hate for styrofoam after doing this work. And this data, like Dierdre's, is reflected in a dashboard. And so after volunteers and staff clean out these trash traps, collect that data, they upload it to this publicly available dashboard. I will say, I think my QR code that I generated from one of those free websites expired like this morning, but I will put into the chat the link to this dashboard. You can find it through the Waterkeepers Carolina website as well if you go to waterkeeperscarolina.org. And so this shows in real time how many cleanups have been conducted, the types of items that have been found. you can sort it by an individual trash trap if you want to know sort of what a specific stream looks like. And then if the pictures in that dashboard haven't already given it away, this is a glimpse into what we found through this data collection effort. And so this is not all of the data we have collected to date, but this is about 100,000 pieces of that data that we initially collected. And this information is now published in a paper in Community Science that I think I have a link to at the end of this presentation. But these are the trends that we've seen from that 100,000 pieces or so of litter that were collected across the state. Again, the most prevalent items were polystyrene foam fragments that made up, over 70% by number of the items that we were collecting from trash traps. Next were plastic bottles. And then you can see just in these top 15 items, which make up about 97% of our data, most of them are plastic items. And then from trap to trap, we saw sort of interesting differences. And so what this graph is showing here, this is the average litter accumulation rate for each trap. So essentially we looked at how many days has a trap been sitting in the stream and how much litter did it collect in total over that time. And we divided the amount of litter over time divided by those days to get an average number of the pieces of litter per day accumulating in that trap. And so we know that, it's not necessarily like each day a perfect 3 pieces of litter are accumulating in a trap, but this is an average to sort of give us a sense of which traps were accumulating more litter. And this varied from a low at Mill Creek in Old Fort, North Carolina of 0.4 pieces per day to a high of almost 94 pieces per day at the Third Fort Creek trap in Durham. And so really variable, basically how trashed those streams are. And we were curious to figure out, what's influencing these different rates of accumulation. And so we looked at the characteristics of the watersheds that were draining to each trap and found that there were correlations between the percent developed land, the percent impervious surface, road density, and population density in those watersheds and how much litter was accumulating in the traps. And so this point up here on all the graphs, that's still that Durham Third Fort Creek. It's still an outlier, still just an exceptionally trashed stream. But overall, the trend is that when you have more people, when you have more road density, when you have more developed land, that's creating that recipe for more litter being able to enter the stream and accumulate in those trash traps. And then the other thing we found was a correlation in most of the traps with precipitation and the amount of litter. And so during stretches where you had more precipitation falling per day, you also then had more accumulation of trash in those trash traps. And so what that suggests to us, coupled with the correlations with developed land and impervious surface, is that precipitation is really playing a role in getting litter off of roadsides and into storm drains and then discharging into the stream and helping basically things just sort of move along and end up in our waterways. Okay, so in the last couple of minutes I have here, I just want to talk about how we've been using this data, some of the cool things that have happened, a couple not so cool things that have happened. But the first is that these trash traps have just created really amazing opportunities to engage the public and engage volunteers with the issue of plastic pollution. And so most all of these traps are managed again by volunteers who are the ones getting in the water, collecting this data, and really, seeing with their own eyes, like how big of a problem this can be, especially in, the stream in their backyard. Local artists have used the trash from these trash traps to create these really magnificent statues that have been on display in Chapel Hill and Saxbahaw, North Carolina. And then finally, they've gotten a lot of media attention. Those are on the right there, just a couple examples of articles that local journalists have written up to talk about this effort. And over these last few years, there's just been consistent media coverage to talk about this work. We've also been using it to try to inform policy. North Carolina is a challenging environment to do environmental policy work, and we're hoping that if we just stick with it and continue to sort of build this record of research and data, that we will be able to get the attention of decision makers. So these are a couple examples of volunteers and students and waterkeeper staff who have made public comments at city council meetings and at the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality's public hearings, using trash trap data to advocate for things like a water quality standard for trash and a local bag fee and styrofoam ban in Durham, North Carolina. And one of the frustrating things that has come out of this work is that as some local municipalities in North Carolina, like Durham and Asheville, had been using trash trap data to advocate for things like a local styrofoam ban, we have had our state legislature essentially ban local governments from being able to implement any kind of efforts like that. So we now are finding ourselves in this situation where local governments no longer have the authority to regulate single-use plastics. And any of that work really does have to be done at the state level. We're still wanting to use this data to advocate for things like styrofoam bans, bottle bills, things that will keep plastics out of the stream to begin with. We now are just having to rethink sort of how we do that in a different way. And this is a cool article that came out recently that I just wanted to highlight because it's really linking the fact that our legislature has banned those local efforts, and yet we now have all of this data from the trash trap showing how trashed some of our waterways are. And so that's been one cool thing to see come out from these data collection efforts, is basically sort of tying that, making that link between sort of the powers that the legislature has taken away from local governments and the effects that it's having in these local waterways. And for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. One of the things I like to show at the very end here is this is a picture of downstream of Third Fork Creek before and after a trash trap was put in. And you can see before the trash trap was put in on the left, how much trash would accumulate on the banks of Third Fork Creek. And now on the right, after that trash trap has been put in, you basically see none of that litter ending up on the banks anymore. It's getting captured by the trap. And so that on sort of the most micro scale has been a really just fulfilling, tangible impact that this trap in Third Fork Creek has had on this waterway. And with that, I just acknowledge all of the people, and this isn't even all of them, but who have collected data and worked towards creating this incredible data set and managing this network of traps in North Carolina. Truly, I played a tiny role in how many hours and how much work has gone into maintaining this network. And if you are interested, this is just a glimpse of the paper where a lot of this data is now published. It is through the Community Science Journal, and it is open access. So you should be able to get your hands on it pretty easily. And with that, I will hand it back to you, Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That was brilliant. Yeah, really frustrating about the ban on bans. That's really, I didn't know that. So that's very frustrating to hear.
Yeah, quite a blow.
Yeah, but the rest of your work, even so, is fantastic. So thanks so much for sharing. We do have a few minutes for questions. I haven't seen any hands raised yet.
This is Susan. I'll ask my question then, as if people want to raise their hands. It kind of goes to your last slide. I do a lot of work in the trash team with our community and volunteers, and I'm just curious about your volunteers overall, mainly. What kind of training, like do you have full training sessions for them, or how do they learn about how to go through what the contents are in the trash traps?
Yeah, so this was sort of a unique situation in that each of the organizations that we were working with are sort of distinct, independent, nonprofit organizations. They're all under this Waterkeepers Carolina umbrella, but they do operate independently in many ways. They have their own executive directors and staff, etc. And so it was really left up to the waterkeeper groups on how they were going to train volunteers. We created alongside that data sheet I showed, we created an instruction document to help standardize things of, like this is exactly the area you need to be collecting plastics from or litter from, mostly plastics, and frequently asked questions of like what makes up a fragment versus not a fragment, so that information, could easily just be handed to volunteers in those packets. But then it was up to those waterkeeper groups, basically how they were training their volunteers to then implement that protocol.
Great, thanks so much. I look forward to reading the paper that you shared.
Yeah, thank you.
I did see Dierdre had her hand raised, so I had a question. And then if we have time, we'll go to Dave, but I'll leave that in Hannah's decisions based on the agenda. Okay, go ahead, Dierdre.
Great. Yeah, I'm really impressed with everything you just presented on. I'm curious with the data card. You said you made the data card based on kind of what you expected to see, and we've done the same thing with our data cards, but they're constantly evolving as people report like clothing is a huge issue, things like that. I'm curious if at any point in the process you considered adapting the data card, or if there are any really common other items over time.
Yeah, I think there's definitely things after several years of doing this work, you would go back and say, oh, I wish I had this category. And there's that tension of, do you change your data categories partway through and sacrifice that sort of like long-term consistency for then the more granular data? I think some of my biggest regrets of what was not included in that data card were we see a lot of we have cigarettes as a category, but we see a lot of lighters and like specifically, cigar packaging that then that just gets categorized as general plastic. We see a lot of pens, and that just gets categorized as general plastic. And so that has, I would say there was probably room to go a little more granular with some of the plastic items there to capture that. And I think the protocol that you all have developed at the International Trash Trap Network does do that. And so I think that's definitely a good thing.
Yeah, we have those same issues with tobacco products. They're always changing, like vapes and Zins and all these things. So that's interesting to hear. Thanks so much.
Yeah, right.
Okay, last question before we move on. Dave, your hand is up, so go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Just a quick note, as a water safety instructor and canoe instructor, I hope that the training included safety, because people could easily get swept away. But I guess my main point, I know that that people from U of T have done a study on our Don River, and they concluded that the microplastic loading in terms of weight is way heavier than any of the floatables, and much more, I'm going to say, ecologically significant. So as a policy suggester, I'm not a policy maker. I mean, it makes sense that we need to look at the floatables. But in terms of, like, if I had $100, where would you put that $100 for addressing riverine pollution?
You mean for like how I'd apply that $100 for
getting rid of plastics, microplastics and floatables? How would you, if all you had was $100, what percent would you be putting your efforts if it was spending money?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting way to phrase it. I would almost say 50-50. I think that the macroplastics have concerns because of their the damage they can do to ecosystems and to wildlife and their ability to leach chemicals and break down into microplastics. But then the microplastic load itself that's coming from our stormwater system, of course, has concerns for ending up in the drinking water and exposing the food chain and wildlife more easily that way. And so I do think, yeah, I would say they're equally important, but it's an interesting way to think about it.
I mean, that's probably how city councilors would think, right? They say, well, Dave, if we're going to give you so much resources or money, where are you going to suggest that we put it, right? That's right. The kind of thinking that they might have. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you once again, Nancy, and thanks for all your questions. Okay, we are going to move on. So our next speaker is Andrea Lema, and she is an environmental economist and sustainability expert specializing in circular economy, plastic pollution, and environmental policy. She has over a decade of experience in conservation, waste management, and sustainable development, and she currently serves as country director at ITTN, leading initiatives to mitigate plastic pollution in Ecuador. Andrea has represented civil society in international negotiations of the UN Global Plastics Treaty and contributed to national legislation on circular economy and plastic reduction. And she is also an active member of global environmental networks and has been recognized internationally for her climate leadership. So we are really excited to hear from you, Andrea. So I can see your presentation is up. We just need to make it full screen and then you are good to go.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Hi, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here with you. Let me see if I can. Okay, I think you're seeing now my presentation. As Hannah mentioned, I am country director of ITTN in Ecuador. And today I would like to present to you a little bit of the work that we are doing here to mitigate plastic pollution in rivers and prevent the plastic to get to the ocean. So we are a British startup that has the primary base of operations in Ecuador in Latin America, but we also have presence in Asia and Africa. We were born in 2017 at the Imperial College London. And we dedicate our efforts to develop comprehensive strategies that effectively reduce plastic pollution in the environment, combining science, technology, and collaborative work alongside communities in the ground. So we have developed a model to tackle plastic pollution, which is called Island Model, to stop the leakage of plastic across fragile ecosystems. And this model presents 4 steps to tackle this issue. The first step is the map to understand, where we identify where the problem, where is hotspot of contamination. And then we can decide if we go to step 2 or we decide otherwise. But step 2 is the act of restore, where we implement 3 different methods to prevent leakage of plastic to the environment, but also recover plastic that has already leaked to terrestrial ecosystems and rivers. Third, we have communicate to transform, where we relied on our data to develop different communication strategies to educate and try to push for a behavioral change. And as a last step, we have a check to validate, where we rely also in the data that we collect through these 3 previous steps to measure the impact that we're having with our project. So here I want to explain a little bit further about each step. So the first one, in the map to understand, we use different tools such as satellite imagery and aerial mapping that we do with Frond to identify the hotspots that we can see on rivers and identify the points where we have to act. Also, we are developing a methodology to calculate the plastic footprint to also gather data of possible plastic leakage that maybe a shop or an industry or a company has, that also give us some data that is relevant on this point. The outcome, the principal outcome that we have through the map of understanding is the identification of plastic pollution hotspots and the root cause of these spots. So these allow us to determine if we are having illegal disposal of waste in the rivershed, or if this waste is coming or a certain waste management system that is not operating well. So this step allows us to identify those kind of issues. Then when we pass to the act of restore, we have developed 3 methods. The first one is a prevention method that we work in collaboration with waste seekers and small scale fisheries, where we have developed a program to support the collection activities of waste seekers, so they can recover the waste directly on the source, and this waste is no longer end up in landfills or leaks to the environment, but is reinserted into the circular economy ecosystem through the work that waste seekers do. Here in Ecuador, waste seekers, and I think in the global south in general, waste seekers have a very important role on waste management systems, and we aim to support the work that they are doing. In the second method, we have the recovery of waste that have leaked to the environment through community cleanup that we do in terrestrial ecosystems, where we work together with communities and also a group of volunteers from universities, but also environmental networks that would like to participate on this effort. We do this monthly, maybe 4 times every month in different locations here in Ecuador. And the last one is waste interception in aquatic ecosystems. We do this through our trash trap that we call Assure technology. This is a technology that we have developed, and we have patented it in the UK, and then we have implemented it here in Ecuador in 4 different rivers. Further on, I'm gonna tell you a little bit more specifically about what the technology is about. But these 3 methods, we do it under a plastic leakage recovery standard that we have also developed that give us the protocols and the different processes that we need to follow to make sure that these activities that we do have the first the needed safeguards for our community and for the environment, but also give us the enough information to be able to do these activities in a way that is traceable, that is transparent, that is measurable, and that can also scale to other localities. So for the third step on the communicate to transform, we use our data to do different actions, such as impact reports and dashboards for partners that support our project, and also data-driven campaigns to promote behavioral change and reduce plastic leakage to the environment. Also community engagement and awareness initiatives that we do sometimes through events, through webinars, and different moments where we can interact with our communities of volunteers and also our strategic partners, and provide some feedback on the process that we conduct. Also, we have partnered with a very big company for communications, that is Latam, that has one of the biggest communities in Latin America. So we can reach not only people from Ecuador, but also from Mexico, from Colombia, from Peru, through the influencers that are managed by this company. And the principal outcome that we get from this is behavioral change, but also a more sensitive community to the plastic pollution problem. So here in Ecuador specifically, there is not much information about how plastics are impacting on our environment, on our health. And when we are looking for through this communication strategies is to provide more of this information to everyone in the society. The fourth point, check to validate. Here we use the different data that we are collecting through satellite imagery, the drones and the transects that we conduct, and the data that we collect through our Assure system or our trash trap, and different other technologies that we have to identify different types of plastic. And we can go over time to analyze if we have had the impact that we want, the positive impact that we want through our methods. So our success indicator is plastic leakage reduction in the water and in the river, low waste density along the coastline. So this shows us that we are indeed preventing plastics to reach the ocean, and effective hotspot cleanup with no reoccurrence of pollution. Next, here you can see a little bit more in detail what is our trash trap about. We call it Assure system, and this is a mobile system that collects high volume of solid waste, around 80 tons per day, and it's the most cost-efficient trash trap in the market as far as we have research about it. The technology consists in two parts. The first one is a floating barrier that retains and diverts the plastic that comes from the river. And the second one is a mobile conveyor extraction that allow us to take the plastic out of the river. And this has a software installed on the top that allows us to identify what kind of plastic we are indeed extracting. We also have another technology for rivers that have ships passing by, that we cannot put a barrier on it, but we need something that is more adaptable and that can be moving around without preventing ships from passing the river, which is called CIAN. This is a floating cell that intercepts and collects solid waste while moving through the current of navigable rivers. So this is in this way we can collect trash from rivers that are even bigger than the ones that we can do through Hyperion. And on the other side, we also have developed a software that we call Hyperion that analyzes and classifies the collected waste, generating data for public policy, circular economy, and environmental traceability. So this software allows us to measure how many bottles, how many bags, how many straws, and what type of polymer these type of products are using. So we can really provide information to national and local governments to promote the creation of different policy at the national level. So the data that we have collected at the moment has informed policy creation, such as the circular economy organic law in Ecuador, which is one of the first countries that has this type of policy already implementing. And also the Plastic Action Partnership Roadmap use the data that we have collected and that we monitor on daily basis to provide a roadmap of different actions that Ecuador should adopt to prevent plastic pollution. And from the other side, this data has also allowed us to develop river pollution policy brief, where we developed one that we presented in the last round of negotiations of the Plastic Treaty in Geneva. And this was very informative, especially for our government in Ecuador, but other governments in the global south that have also be able to use this information to relate to their own reality. So a little bit of the work that we have in Ecuador already. We have 4 deployments installed in different regions of the country. Through our prevention methods, we have recovered over 84,000 pounds of waste. This we've done in collaboration with 7 associations of waste pickers, providing benefits to over 113 waste pickers directly. Through our recovery or cleanup method, we have recovered 88,000 pounds of trash that are in terrestrial ecosystem. We have done this by conducting more than 50 cleanups and having more than 3,000 volunteers participating on this effort. And finally, we have recovered 34,000 pounds of waste directly on the rivers through our Shore and Hyperion technology. This is the results only from July 2024 to July 2026. And we have also worked globally on Ivory Coast in Africa, where we are also starting to implement one of our barriers. And we have also conducted a study on Motagua River in Guatemala, which is one of the most populated rivers on our region. Here, just a little bit of the global awards that we have won through the time, recognizing the development in technology and innovation that we have provided. A little bit of our grants and different organizations that have invested in our project, and our members of the Galapagos Guardians Alliance, which is our biggest project that is using all the methodology that I have explained, and also supporting the implementation of the trash traps that we have. So I think that is all from my side. I am very happy to attend any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was brilliant. I really like the fact that you use your data to validate how you're doing and to make sure that the technologies are actually capturing trash and making a difference. That was really cool to hear. We're a little bit over on time, but we do have time for a question or two if anyone has any. Andrew, your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
I do have a general question for folks, and it may not be something they can answer right now, but looking at we've talked about a bunch of different technologies here for collecting and or intercepting plastics, either on land or in water. I'd be interested in knowing whether anyone has looked on a normalized basis, meaning like sort of an operating hours basis, on the, let's just say, just the capital cost of that piece of equipment versus the amount of material being collected. And so sort of a cost per ton on a capital basis. The operating can vary widely depending on whether you're doing it manually or with equipment and stuff. If that's not done, it gets back to the question I think the gentleman from City of Toronto was asking for, and shout out to Toronto, I'm in Mississauga, is it would be interesting to know how those perform. And obviously that's going to depend on how much material you're getting, but just on a comparative basis, how does that look?
I can give a little bit of insight on that if it's useful. So Andrew, not put on the spot. There's been a couple of studies on that where they've looked at like the cost benefit of these technologies, but it's not been done on, I don't know of it being done on kind of an individual scale or that in such a broad, there's obviously such a broad scope of different technologies that are out there. I think in our directory we have over 80 now that are in use around the world, just completely like all different types. So I think it, like you said, it really depends on the scenario, like how much trash you've got in the waterway or on the beach, where you put the trap. Like Andrea was saying, like they map out where the accumulation points are to make sure they're getting as much trash as possible. But yeah, it's definitely something that should be done more, because it would be really useful to people to help them decide whether they're going to get their bang for their buck, really. It's a really good question.
Yes, thank you for the question. I would like to share just a little bit of our perspective on that matter. So we are trying to constantly redesign our technology to make it more cost efficient. And given that we have developed this model, we are in constant change and adaptation of the technology. Depending on the river that we want to intervene. But more than that, we think that collecting this data on the river, especially here in Ecuador, no one else is doing that. And this data has really been key to push towards the creation of different policies that maybe act more on prevention of waste waste creation, but it has a higher, it is amplified, or the reach of the policy is amplified, so the impact is even greater. But without that information that we collect through the technology, probably those policies won't have enough data to be based on, and therefore will not be created.
Thanks, Andrea. It was good insight from you actually in your experience, so thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to the next speaker and our final speaker, last but not least. So next up we have Allison Blood, who is Senior Manager of Environmental Projects and Advocacy at Waterfront Partnership of Baltimore. She leads policy engagement efforts using data from the city's 4 trash wheels to inform solutions that reduce plastic pollution, improve water quality, and ground truth the efficacy of policy change. Trash wheel data has been used to pass a statewide polystyrene ban, municipal plastic bag bans, and litigation from Baltimore City against tobacco companies for the expense of cigarette litter cleanup and environmental remediation. So You look like you're all ready to go, Allison, so please go ahead.
Great, thank you. Wonderful speakers so far. It's nice to be among people doing the same work, and it sounds like we have the same priorities and similar struggles. So thank you for letting me be here, and thanks to ITTN for synthesizing all of this data into a dashboard so all of our individual organizations can use the information to increase our impact in reducing plastic pollution. So I'll keep it brief. I'll keep it fun. Our trash interceptors have googly eyes. So that can be the theme of, of my presentation today. So we have used the trash wheels in Baltimore to inform lots of different policy. Well, let's see if, okay, there we go. So I'll talk about how we've used the trash wheels to identify the plastic pollution problems, how we have supported the need for a solution, how we support that advocacy, what our advocacy looks like, how we prove the efficacy of policy change, and then how we take it a step further to build community and create advocates for that plastic pollution reduction. So in Baltimore Harbor, we have 4 trash wheels. We installed the first trash wheel, which is a renewably powered trash interceptor in the Baltimore Harbor in 2014. And we have since added 3 more to the family, with our last and largest one installed, Gwenda, the Goodwill of the West. So all of our trash wheels have personalities. People can relate to them. And so they have lots of fans. And so we have, the 4 areas have been identified as the leading contributors to trash in Baltimore Harbor. So we have identified those. How the trash wheels work. So they are stationary at these rivers, streams, and outfalls around the harbor, powered by a water wheel that is supplemented by a pump powered by the solar panels on the back of the shade. The dumpster is filled, which is on a barge, and then removed as needed. The trash wheels just operate during the rain because that's when we're seeing the trash flowing. And this trash wheel has a Ravens jersey on it because we have partnered with the Ravens. They've provided funding for our trash wheels for the next 5 years, which is exciting. So how do we use the trash wheels to quantify the plastic pollution problem? We count every dumpster that we take out of Baltimore Harbor. We count the tonnage, and then we break it down into the priority categories. So here you can see the orange line is the total trash collected by the trash wheel since inception in 2014. You can see when the other trash wheels were added. And we collect about 500 tons of trash and debris every year from Baltimore Harbor. And then we break that down into those priority categories. So we're tracking things like plastic bags, cigarette butts, which is our number one, as it seems to be for everyone, beverage containers, foam containers. We get a lot of sports balls. So we're just tracking that for fun, but we do collect those numbers, as well as fun things that we find. So we post about fun things like a guitar, which we actually tuned, a beer keg, a snake. We did find a ball python snake on the trash wheel, which created quite a buzz in Baltimore. And then we create some visualization so people can see, what does it mean? You know, sometimes these numbers are hard to visualize. So what are those visualizations? Here in this graphic, we have the equivalent in Wales. So the way that we estimate our the pieces of trash are by we have the conveyor belt on the trash wheel where the trash is going into the dumpster has paddles. We know a paddle rate, and we also know how quickly these dumpsters are filled. So if operators are on the trash wheel while it's collecting trash, they will take several samples of the paddles to see what's on there and extrapolate that to the total dumpster using the dumpster fill rate. Or if no one is on the dumpster while they're being filled, they take a sample, a bushel sample, see what the contents are, and then extrapolate that to the entire dumpster. We supplement those estimations with events called dumpster dives, where we bring a dumpster from the trash wheel. We get about 150 volunteers to come help us sort through a stinky dumpster of trash. And it's one of our premier events. People really enjoy it, which is great. And it provides us with such great data. So again, we're sorting into those priority categories. Definitely can echo some of the thoughts on what do you and don't you count as far as categories. For this specific event, the volunteers really want to count everything. It's hard to say, no, we're not going to count that. We have the similar thing with tobacco products. So we've now just created a tobacco product category, because now that all of the pieces besides cigarette butts, that's becoming such a huge category as well. In the center picture, we have our the Maryland Senate President, as well as the bottle bill sponsor, Delegate Terrassa, and another delegate from Baltimore City who came to our dumpster dive last year, which we were supporting a bottle deposit bill from Maryland. So we also use these events to promote policy change. So once we have, and our data, I'll go back to that for a second, is posted online publicly on our Mr. Trash Wheel site. So anyone can see what we've collected since 2014. That data set is available to anyone who wants it. And so we have lots of students, from elementary students all the way through grad students, using that data for their various research projects. So we have this data set, and then so how is it being used? We also have lots of pictures. So pictures are helpful for causes like the styrofoam ban. So in Baltimore City, there was a polystyrene ban that went into effect, I believe, in 2017. It predates my time in Baltimore. Students, which was called Baltimore Beyond Plastic. It was about 200 students representing about 14 Baltimore City schools who lobbied the school system to switch from styrofoam containers or styrofoam trays at lunch to compostable trays. So started in the school system, then they decided to take it to City Hall. And so we supported them with data and with photos of the styrofoam that we're seeing coming down the waterways. So then the ban was accepted by Baltimore City, and then influenced the state ban on polystyrene. So that was an exciting trajectory to watch how a group of students had such a big impact on legislators at the local and state level, and then using the trash wheel data. So what was very evident to us is that styrofoam was a huge issue in our waterways. When it would rain, the waterways leading to our trash wheels would be covered in white with styrofoam piled on top of all the debris. So it was very evident that styrofoam was an issue in our waterways and all throughout our city. And one of the most powerful things was educating and informing the students, and then seeing how their efforts led to a significant reduction in styrofoam in our waterways, which I will get to in just a little bit. We had a similar trajectory for plastic bag bans in Baltimore as well, using our numbers for several years to, when you have a number and you can tell a legislator, this is what's coming into our harbor, and you can see it increasing, that really makes a statement, and it's hard to ignore. You can see photos of it, but when you combine photos with several years of data, it's hard to ignore. So we supported the Baltimore City bag ban through providing numbers and advocacy, going to the Capitol to testify during the hearings. We have also testified for plastic bag in Maryland, but this is at Baltimore at City Hall. And that went into effect in 2019. It was accepted in 2019, went into effect in 2021. And so our next effort is a bottle bill for Maryland. With the absence of the styrofoam in our waterways now, it's just covered with plastic bottles during every rain event. So using visualization of the bottles that we're collecting in the trash wheels, we've collected almost 2.5 million plastic bottles in the trash wheels. We've created things like Rocky the Rockfish down here as a visualization to the harms of plastic in our waterways. And then we team up with coalitions of organizations to head to the Capitol through lobby days, through rallies, and through testimony and hearings to support a bottle deposit bill for Maryland. So you can see some fun signs. Our rally happened to be on Valentine's Day, so we had fun making signs for that. And then here's that efficacy, proving the efficacy of policy change. This is pretty impactful when you're, supporting plastic pollution reduction policy change. We've saw when the styrofoam ban went into effect, we can see in the city and then in the state how we still had that marked decrease. We've seen an 88% reduction in polystyrene in the 3 trash wheels. Our 4th trash wheel came online after we had no data before the ban, so we removed that from the data set, but it's a huge reduction, 88% reduction in styrofoam. Like, this works. And it's really exciting to be able to tell legislators it works. And we saw something similar, 68% reduction in plastic bags since the plastic bag ban in Baltimore City. Our watershed, so that leads to specifically Mr. Trash Wheel, encompasses 2 counties. So we have Baltimore City and then the greater Baltimore County. So we saw a larger decrease when the county also banned plastic bags, which came after the city ban. So we also use social media. We put googly eyes on the trash wheel and gave them a social media account to communicate with the public. And we've seen such an amazing community built around the trash wheels and the essence of the trash wheels, and joining the effort to make the Baltimore Harbor cleaner. I'll echo what we heard earlier about the creepy things that you might find washing its way into a trash interceptor. Plenty of baby dolls. We have an Airbnb ad here from this mattress that's washed up. I mentioned the guitar and the snake. So you really can engage the public in silly things to get your message across, to highlight the impacts we're having through policy change, or highlight the problem so that you can create advocates for that change. So we have many trash wheel fans in Baltimore. Every Halloween we have lots of trash wheel costumes. It's really, the trash wheels have become an icon and something that Baltimoreans are proud of. People are tattooing the trash wheels on their bodies. It really is a community. It's created a sense of belonging for a better harbor, for people to enjoy, but also for the aquatic life and the environment. People really care about it. And when you give them these fun connections and give them fun opportunities, like our dumpster dive, we have lots of other events bringing together trash wheel fans, and always highlighting the impact that the trash wheels have, but that we don't want to be collecting trash forever. It's not a solution. We have problems that we're trying to address. So, with the overlay of, we'd like to retire the trash wheels, and here's how we can do it through these different ways that we advocate for plastic pollution reduction. So that is it for me. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Allison. I always love hearing about the trash wheels, and I think it's such a great mix. I always use an example of great community outreach and engagement, because it is such a nice mix of fun, like all these photos, it's all really fun, but then you have a serious message behind it all, and I think it's a really great example of that. Okay, so we do have time for a couple of questions, and then we will go on and get everyone else back on and do a little bit of a panel discussion. But if anyone has questions specifically for Allison now about the trash wheels, then it's your time. Dave, your hand is up, so go ahead.
Thanks for your presentation. Thanks for making it fun. It's clear that you rely upon some sort of a current or tides or something to feed the floatable in. And so, has this ever been used on a river where you might be getting logs and stuff coming down that might hurt your Mr. Trash?
Yes, so our largest trash wheel actually has a like hydraulic arm for logs. We do get logs at the trash at Mr. Trash Wheel, which is the Jones Falls River leads there. The Gwynns Falls is what leads to our other one with the arm. So we have people who have to come out, and pretty much operators are on the machines during rain events, heavier rain events, because we do get a lot of debris, but they can handle it. The conveyors move slow, but they're very powerful, so they can handle logs.
Okay, and is my last question, is there a market for Mr. Trash, used market, like secondhand Mr. Trash?
For the trash that we collect?
No, for the
Or
machines.
for
Because
the
you'll be so
machines. Yeah,
successful, you
yeah.
don't need it anymore. You could sell it to us, maybe. You know the deal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, sure. I'm sure that's an option.
Okay. But I guess more seriously, is there a patent on the design, or could anybody just make that?
Yeah, so a company called Clearwater Mills builds and operates our trash wheels, and they have built trash wheels in other places. They just finished one in California. And there's one that was built a couple years ago in Panama. So they are they've consulted on projects too. So Clearwater Mills would be an
Okay,
organization to reach out to about.
thank you.
The googly eyes are intellectual property, but the trash wheels anyone can.
Well, we could have one winking, maybe. I don't know.
There you go.
Thanks, Dave. Do we have any other questions before we go to panel? If not, then Allison, you're off the hook and we can go to panel questions now. So I'm going to invite back all of our presenters. We have about 15, just over 15 minutes for the panel discussion at the end. So I have some questions I wanted to start us off with, and then we can open it up to the rest of the attendees of our webinar, and you can ask them any questions that you'd like if you didn't get the chance to after they presented. Now is your chance. But I wanted to kind of start off with maybe I guess kind of a broad question, but and you've all kind of touched on it, but my question is, what other factors aside from the data collection and reporting side of things do you think are really valuable for translating your work into action and policies to reduce plastic pollution? And whoever wants to go first can go first.
I can add one thing that we didn't touch on in terms of sort of an engagement strategy, which has been to invite lawmakers and decision makers to the trash trap cleanups. And so they put on the waders and they get in the stream and they count the styrofoam. And that's just been a great opportunity for them to sort of witness firsthand the local impact, but also then talk to the volunteers who have, many of which have become experts on, the plastic pollution issue in that stream and can convey what they think good solutions are. And so that's been another fruitful engagement strategy that we've had.
Yeah, I can add something I think we see a lot in Tahoe is we engage both the local community and the visiting community. So we have so many visitors, and we've really made our cleanups over time something that families choose to do while they're on vacation, and then take that kind of stewardship ethic with them when they leave. And I think the trash trap, I loved the googly eyes from Baltimore. We've done similar googly eyes on the Bebot, and I think engaging, especially kids and young people, with these exciting new technologies and teaching them what it's about, we've seen a lot of success with that and personification of these technologies.
I can speak. I mean, I think public engagement is huge for us. That we have the data, we share the data, we use it in our communications, but the biggest impact for our organization, I think, is through the different ways that we engage the public. And I think education, like for students too, is huge. How can you get kids, and so we do field trips down to the waterfront and tell them all about the trash wheel. But so yeah, how can you create stewards at a very young age too, to then go home and tell their parents, and how can that influence their behavior through yeah, many different avenues.
Andrea, did you have anything to add on that question, or we can move on if not, if everyone's covered everything?
Oh, no, just to mention from our side, data is really important from different aspects. I would say primarily to communicate and educate and share the knowledge that we are gathering. And secondly, to inform public policy that can be efficient and that can be effective on different territories. So that's what we are aiming for through the collection of all this data that we do through our program.
Yeah, I think you will have overlapping answers, which is kind of what I expected, which is that it's not just about the cleanup, it's not just about the data collection, it's about like getting people involved as well, and all of those things kind of working together to influence what's happening upstream. So thank you for that. Susan, let me know if I can't see any hands up, but I can't, or any questions in the chat, but if not, I do have another question.
Yeah, just to say, I don't see any hands up yet, but if anyone does want to ask a question, they can just use the raise hand feature, and then we'll unmute you. Or you can also type it right in the chat too.
My other question is a little bit more detailed. It's what other factors? Oh, sorry, I've already asked you that one. This is more specific, but I think it would be really useful for other groups who are sitting on quite a lot of data and are not sure quite what to do with it. It's what ways do you currently share your data with decision makers, and of the ways you do it, is there anything that you found to be most effective?
I can jump in. Definitely when we're talking with policymakers about specific issues, we want to pull the data points that are relevant to their jurisdictions and to the issue at hand. That's actually more challenging than it sounds at Tahoe, because we have so many, well, we have multiple states and then we have so many counties. So that's something where our data collection has actually had to evolve over time to get better location data from cleanups. For example, we have a state park that's on the border of California and Nevada. So how do we divide that data point to share with decision makers? But I would say when we share with them, we want specific data points, and then we also want them to make sense to the legislators, people who are not steeped in data all the time. So it's simple things like rounding numbers so that it's not something hard to conceive of. I think comparing to the weight of whales is a really good example of trying to make these numbers make sense and have some sort of tangible comparison for lawmakers. So we have a lot of success with black bears, since they're a known thing that's around here. But all of those like science communication tools, we definitely put into practice when communicating.
Yeah, we do the same with raccoons in Toronto. So
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I can just echo what Dierdre just said. You don't want to give too much. Like, you want clear information that is digestible in the moment, because if they're thinking about so many things, they're reviewing so many things at one time. So like, what is the point that you really want to get across that's going to be clear as they're reading it? So we create like fact sheets. If we're supporting a bottle bill, then it's a fact sheet. Like, here's broken down what I want you to know in bullet points. That's easy to digest.
I'd add that in addition to the data, which obviously I think is so important, but one of the very compelling pieces of the trash traps are the pictures that come out of it, and for people to really be able to see, what it looks like when a trash trap is full after a big rainstorm. Coupling the data with those pictures, I think, has been one of the more effective strategies we've seen.
Well, for us, what has worked most is the development of policy briefs that can provide context information, but also important data that we have gathered, and the simpler, the better. So policymakers are not scientists most of the time. They are politicians, and they need to understand in just a few minutes to be able to support or not the data that we are having. So we are always working on the development of these policy briefs through that principle. The simpler, the better.
Yeah, seems like, again, you've all kind of said similar things. Like it seems like I found this myself, there's a balance between like what we might think is interesting or important and then what they actually need to know. You kind of got to get that balance right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
really quick, sorry, on that point, we published our data in scientific paper, and really the point of that was, I mean, to share the information, and of course, but also just to have sort of the citation that, this research is legitimate and has been peer reviewed, but never with the intention necessarily that that paper is what's going to go to a decision maker or, a legislator, that all of that would then get translated into those policy briefs and fact sheets. And that scientific paper at the end of the day is just sort of the footnote at the bottom that's like, this research has been vetted and reviewed.
Yeah. I do think also the fact that there's a published study on it also adds legitimacy to sometimes when you're sharing the data. It can be a really good way to kind of show that the data's been collected in like and analyzed in a way that's published and other people are using it and things like that. I think it's also really great. Okay, we have some questions in the chat. So we have first one from Gaston, which is, how do you evaluate public engagement and how effective it is? Do you see impacts on trends related to campaigns and not to legislation and bans? It's an interesting question, actually.
I think that we evaluate on participation, and that it would be hard to suss out impact on trends from a public engagement perspective, because our watershed is so big and contains multiple counties. So I think participation, engagement, participation in the there's lots of different, if we're doing cleanups, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'd say it's harder to see the trends that legislation and bans can provide in public engagement, but I think participation still matters.
Yeah, I would echo that. We're always looking at participation in our cleanups and things like that where there's physical attendance, but beyond that, we make available a number of citizen science surveys that our volunteer base can submit to us through. That includes a litter survey. And I think we see kind of these compounding effects. Like when the plastic water bottle ban was under consideration, we're receiving more reports of people pointing out the plastic water bottle problem. So there's kind of this like synergy that happens from the public and the advocacy side, which is a good indicator to us. And also just anecdotes. Like we'll hear from folks at cleanups about how they're noticing all the plastic that's being handed out at certain restaurants and they want us to go talk to that restaurant owner and things like that. So lots of anecdotal evidence too.
Yeah, it seems like it feeds into one another rather than seeing them separately. It kind of, they work together, the public engagement and the campaigns and the data. Okay, then I will go on to another question we have in the chat, which is from Julia. And she says, as a policy manager for a jurisdiction, I often have trouble encouraging NGOs and environmental groups to use the data card litter data tracking tools we have. Sorry, there's a slash in there. Data card / litter data tracking tools. Do you have any tools you use to encourage other NGOs to participate?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We have really detailed data cards that we want all of our volunteers to use. This is answering in a bit of a different framework, but with volunteers instead. Some volunteers clean up every single day in their neighborhood and they don't want to use the data card. And that's obviously a challenge because as much as we want all the data from them, we also want them to keep cleaning. So we have found workarounds, which I think ITTN does as well, of offering a much less granular data process for people who want to choose that. So that comes in the form of the citizen science survey that I was talking about, where instead of giving us a really detailed data card every single day, folks can just indicate to us that they cleaned at a certain site and maybe the total number of items they found, or maybe the total weight. Just trying to still get at that information, but in a lower lift way. And then to your question about other NGOs, we're always trying to do the same data harmonizing effort in the Tahoe Basin that we've talked about today. And I actually think pointing to tools like ITTN and saying, should we all move in the direction of that standard is really helpful. So that's one other tool we use.
This question is definitely something we've experienced or I've experienced as well, in that, I mean, just as somebody who like thinks litter data is super interesting and important to collect, it was, you know, a learning process to realize that not every volunteer feels the same way, and some volunteers truly do just want to go out there and clean up the area without doing the data collection. And so I think part of it was figuring out just that, you know, some people do not want to do it, and that's fine. And the other part, in terms of thinking about data harmonization, we had the issue of some waterkeeper groups had already started collecting data for their trash traps using protocols that they already, you know, had in-house. And again, and I said this earlier, but it kind of goes back to that tension of, do you change your protocol and sacrifice that long-term consistency to then be harmonized with other groups? There's pros and cons to both of those. And for groups that did switch their protocol partway through to work with our protocol and have that harmonized data, it's similar to what Dierdre was saying, was that we found, you know, like really showing them the value of, if you use this protocol, like your data goes into the dashboard and then you can download it, and, you know, I'm on the other end of it helping to manage it. Showing them those pros, I think, is what tipped some people into that direction of wanting to harmonize and switch. But it is a tough one.
Yeah, I know from our experience with the ITTN, when we developed our protocols, we knew that other groups already had been using other protocols that they developed themselves or already existed. And so in our database, we can kind of, you can still enter data into it if you haven't used the ITTN protocols. It's quite broad. We just kind of work with you to harmonize it into the format that we use and make sure that everyone's in agreement with how it looks before it goes in there, which I think is a really good thing. But yeah, it's really difficult. When we developed the protocols, we made, as Dierdre said, we have a simple version where you just record the weight, and then we have a more detailed version where it can take quite a long time to count all the items. But we did that because we know that some groups, they don't have time. The people who are emptying the trap might just really only have time to empty it and then move on. So yeah, and Sarah's saying in the chat, yeah, there's an age-old problem with the international coastal cleanup as well. It's like, I think, Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but people can just weigh their bags from their cleanups as well with ICC data, or they can have the option for recording more. So yeah, is that, I think it is showing the benefit, and then showing that there's different options. So it's harmonization, not standardization. Okay. I am really sorry, but I think we might have to close up so we don't run over time, because I'm conscious that we have 2 minutes, and I would really like to just have a couple of minutes to say thank you before we finish. So thank you once again to, I'm just going to have slides, so I'll put them up. can see them. I just want to say thanks once again to all of you and all the panelists and presenters for speaking today. I really loved all of your presentations, so thank you so much for your time. And thank you to everyone who attended today. It was really great to see such a large number of people register and actually be here from all different parts of the world. So thanks to everyone. And our team we're really enjoying hosting all these webinars, so we hope to do some more in the future on different topics. And if you actually have any ideas for topics you really want to hear more about that would really help you and your work, let me know. You can email me, or you can email us all together at the email address on the screen. So these are ways you can keep in touch. We have our email addresses. All of our resources are on our website that I mentioned, the data collection and then some. And yeah, we'd really like to hear from everyone and keep in touch. So I'm really sorry if there was any questions that we couldn't get to at the end just there, then you can email me, or we can share them with any of the presenters as well if you have specific questions for anyone. I'm sure they'll be very happy to answer them. But I think we are at the hour, so I will say thank you once more and I'll let you all go. But thanks again, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it.